New Year's Day service, Reverend Anna and I, as well as the rest of the staff, have some really great things planned for it. So it's actually, it's very connected to today's talk, which is really bringing in some of the traditions that we have experienced at Unity on the Bay through the last couple of years, and also renewing them and refreshing them and allowing some new energies to show up for each of us and collectively for Unity on the Bay. So you're in for a treat. So give yourself the treat of being with us for our holiday services. Now, with that, so I'm sitting next to Faye and Francesca after the service, after the meditation, and they're saying, oh, the chakras are moving, the chakras are moving. So if you had that experience, I'm now going to give you another one. This one not for your chakras, but for your funny bone, which is just as important sometimes, right? So here's just a couple of them. What is the best Christmas present in the world? A broken drum. You just can't beat it. I feel like there should be a beat to that, boom. What happens? What do you get if Santa goes down the chimney when the fire is lit? Crisp Kringle. Is that too violent? What do you call a kid that doesn't believe in Santa? A rebel without a clause. Was that more like a coal in your Christmas? All right, okay, well, let's just move on. What I wanted to talk to you about today, and what I actually wanted to share with you, is some of my own personal Christmas traditions. Because Christmas is really a time of renewal. It is a renewed sense of the rebirth of the Christ within us and how we can embody it more fully. And it's a time of looking at some of the past, right? Many of us look at the past and Christmas past and how those have played out, and we think about what it means to us, right? Not only to be in this place of acknowledging the Christ presence within us, but how the year's gone and how the last couple of years we've experienced these memories and these holidays. And for me, a few years ago, this idea of renewal came up, and I really wanted to renew some of the traditions that were so dear to me in the past. And when I talk about renewal, it's not just about bringing those traditions to this moment and to today, but also renewing the way in which I experienced them, the way that I saw them. And so the invitation for you this Sunday, and as we get closer to the holiday, is to look at some of those traditions that have meant something to you, see if there's some that you may want to bring back because for whatever the reason you kind of put to the side, and then also be really intentional about what it can mean for you, where you're at in this moment in time, and looking at the ways in which maybe the way that you understood them before is not the way in which you have to understand them today, and really renew your mind through them. So this bringing it back, really, right? And seeing what is being brought back. Now, Agnes Barrow says, what is Christmas? It is the tenderness of the past, the courage for the present, and hope for the future. Tenderness of the past. I know that when we think about traditions, we think about some of the people that we had those traditions with, and there's some tenderness. Some of those individuals may no longer be physically in our lives. There's a tenderness that our heart experiences when we think about those that we shared those experiences with, what those experiences meant for us, right? What it meant for us to experience them as a child, and as we continue to grow into them. And so there is that, and I really want to acknowledge that sometimes the holidays bring up a certain level of grief or tenderness, and we can be with that. Right? We can be with that, and we can hold that, and we can hold ourselves in that, and realize that that actually can really make the holidays even more special, to be able to just remember the tenderness by which we had those experiences in the past. It's about the courage of the present. how are we really allowing these traditions to give us a sense of courage to live into our Christhood, right? Like this renewal that takes place within us that we are acknowledging during the holiday season, but it really does take place moment by moment, every single day, every moment that we allow ourselves to be conscious about what is truly happening in our lives and through and as us. And so how can we really bring some of those traditions to bring us into a place of being so anchored in who we are that it gives us the courage not only to accept who we are, but then to live it out in a more powerful way in the world, and through that, be able to hold the hope for the future, that we may live into this Christ presence that we are, that we may be able to be that shining light that allows not only our path to be more bright, but that allows the path to be more brighter for other people. And so these traditions can really do wonders for us. And it's been my experience that the more that I've allowed myself to bring those traditions that have meant something for me, and then sit with, what does it mean to me now that the real message and the real experience of Christmas comes alive? We can transcend and include, right? Like we can include that which has brought us into this place and into this sense of Christmas, and then we can transcend our own understanding of who we have been and who we are meant to be. Now, Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, says this: in this matter of celebrating Christmas, what should be the message to get at the real Christmas? Shouldn't it be the celebration of the angels, glory to God in the highest, peace on earth, goodwill to men? That is, glorify God in the highest on the earth, and peace on the earth, and goodwill to men. For me, this season is really about inspiring us and glorifying the divinity that we are, and then bringing it into this heaven on earth, this place that we have within humanity, the spaces that we are living into. And so how we can use traditions to bring us to that sense. And all of us have different traditions that we are able to play with, and different traditions that have meant something for us. And here we are. What can they mean now, and how we can use them to move deeper and further into the Christ essence that we are celebrating for us. Now, one of the things that I missed the most when I moved to the United States from Ecuador when I was 7 years old is these huge family posadas. Anybody ever heard of posadas? Few people. There's a couple of different countries in Latin America, I think mostly, or in the Caribbean, that celebrate posadas. And a posada is basically a gathering of loved ones that come together during the weeks leading up to Christmas, and you come together to have fun, to sing carols, a lot of eating, maybe a lot of drinking too, and then to pray and the novena, and to really just gather around and really acknowledge each other's presence during the holidays. Those memories of posadas in Ecuador and the importance in my life of the posadas is something that I believe was probably the greatest gift that my maternal grandmother, Maria Elena, gave me. That awareness of how powerful it was to come together as a family, whatever family we have, whether it's the family we're born into or our chosen family, to really celebrate what the meaning of Christmas is all about. And so first what we do is, and this, each country differs a little bit, but in Ecuador, one of the things that we do is we separate out into two groups. And there's a group that stays inside the house and another one that gets ushered outside the house. And you have to think that a few years ago, I decided I was gonna start doing these again. Not many people in Miami, or at least in North Miami Beach, know what is going on when they're passing by, because all of a sudden there's a group inside and outside, and the group outside starts a song. Basically, they represent Joseph and Mary that are traveling, looking for a place to basically give birth to Jesus. And the people inside are the innkeepers. And if you know the story of Christmas, Mary and Joseph are coming by and asking for a place to stay, and what do they get told? Nope, no place in this inn, right? And so the same thing happens with this really crazy, really loud song, where outside Mary and Joseph are, please let me in, here we are, we've been traveling afar, and the innkeepers are saying at the beginning, no, 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 you can't come in, keep going, until all of a sudden the people outside remind the innkeepers who they are, what they're about, and that the birth of Jesus is to take place very soon. And all of a sudden, the innkeepers inside welcome them in. And as soon as you open the door, all of a sudden, it's like the loudest, most fun song because you're celebrating. And it made me really think, and I sit with this today, how many times are we that innkeeper where sometimes we push away the birth of the rebirth of the Christ within us. We push away or not allow in truly the spirit of Christmas and also the awareness of the Christ presence within us. As Marianne Williamson tells us, right? Sometimes we are most scared of our light, not the darkness. And so how many times have we said, nope, not today? But then all of a sudden we get that reminder, wait, this is who we are. This is what we're really about. And all of a sudden, our hearts open wide, our minds open wide, and the Christ essence, the Christ spirit, is able to be embodied in us more fully. I really invite you to consider how we're making a home for that Christ presence. How every space that we occupy can be that home for us to fully embody the Christ spirit. And to recognize that sometimes we may just not be conscious of the ways in which we are pushing away the truth of our being, and we can become conscious. We can ask ourselves, how are we inviting it in? How are we making space for it? How are we allowing ourselves to live more fully into the truth of our being, in our relationships, in our home life, at work, in any space that we occupy, in order for the Christ Spirit to be reborn within us and for us to really be anchored in it? All we need is a willingness. That's it. All we need is a willingness to accept our truth. And so how are we willing? And how are we using this time to really open up and say, here I am, God. Here I am to fully acknowledge how you show up not only in my life, but in me. And here I am willing to not only allow it, embody it, but share it and be that in the world. And Advent really invites us this time of preparation to be more conscious of how we're doing that, how we are allowing ourselves to be more willing. And if you think about, well, I was reading about this kind of analogy, but Mary is giving birth to Jesus, who represents that Christ nature within us. And there's time of gestation, and there is a time of being in the womb. And if you think about the womb, or if I think about the womb, I think of comfort. I think of some time of silence, right? Being on my own, but fully knowing that I am one with God. And so I really invite us to consider how we are allowing ourselves to be in the silence during this time, to have the carols, go out, to the malls if you need to go out to the malls, and also take care of the self in the silence, in moments of contemplation, and really in moments of becoming more aware of what this is all truly about. It's an opportunity for us to really ask ourselves, are we done fighting that Christ that we are? Are we done pushing it away? And I don't know about you, but I really am done. If I really sit with it and I really acknowledge the ways in which I may have pushed it away, I'm done with that. I'm done with the judgments. I'm done with the self-damaging ways of being that don't allow me to shine brightly, that doesn't really acknowledge my truth. I'm done with it. And this is really an opportunity for all of us to step really into that. And how powerful that we can not only do that ourselves and be anchored in ourselves, but know that there are so many other people during this time that are doing the same thing. It's like this collective consciousness that we can lean on. Now, once we are done singing and, coming into the house, one of the things that we do is we gather around the nativity. How many of you have nativity sets? It was something that I didn't have for a long time. You don't see that many nativity sets at Unity on the Bay or in Unity, really, because we really try to go beyond the physical presence and the historical part of the birth of Jesus, moving into more of the metaphysical. But I have to tell you, it's been so beautiful for me to have a nativity. And I got a nativity set a couple of years back when a couple of years before I started doing the posadas again. And it really reminds me, see, bringing that tradition forward, it was a way of acknowledging what took place 2,000 years ago. But like I mentioned last week, there's an opportunity for us to recognize what is taking place here and now. And the nativity for me is a reminder of what is taking place here and now. Eric Butterworth says, Christmas has little magic in it when we are just looking backwards to worship the child in the manger. Magic is found by looking forward to that day when our own Christ child may unfold in our lives, a time to look inward to its presence right now. See, the manger has such deep meaning. The nativity has such deep meaning. The manger is that which is us. We are the house of God. We are the house of the Christ presence. We are the human consciousness in which that Christ presence can be reborn. There's no needed bells and whistles. It's not about what we have. It's about who we are. It's not about decorating it all nice and pretty that makes it special. It's the willingness, the openness that makes it special. Then above the manger, there's usually a star, and that's the light of God. That is the light that really shines our path and the guidance that we receive. The moment to not only open up our hearts, but the moment that we say, yes, we are willing to experience life in a different way. We're here willing to experience ourselves as the embodiment of the Christ. That guidance shows up and lights the way, lights the path. Eric Butterworth also says, light is the reality of God within all creation. It is the reality of our own potential. All overcoming, all healing, all self-expansion is the inevitable effect of the dawning of light within and its effusion into our lives. Right here and right now, we can say that we are willing to accept this light, that we can be willing to embody this light and to recognize that the light has already been within us all this time and we can shine it brightly, that we can really acknowledge it and live into it more fully. It is who we are. It is what guides our path, and it is the reality of our lives that really moves us into greater ways of being in the world. Now, I love the little baby Jesus, and I was thinking about it this morning, the power of it being a baby Jesus that's in the manger. Because as that Christ is being reborn in me and that signifies it, it also reminds me that I've just begun to tap into my own light. It's that first dawning of recognizing our truth, and I'm really a baby in it. There's so much more depth. There is so much more light. There is so much more good. There is so much more wisdom and peace and joy and all the things that we know God to be that I may not fully comprehend just how deep and expansive God is. I'm just taking baby steps, and it's okay. And as we continue to evolve and grow, we will recognize more fully what God is. And it will be our saving grace. It will be what allows us to really experience life in a new way, to trust it, to really have the courage to just take one step at a time in our knowing of what God is, and to give us hope of what that means. Now, the Virgin Mary then symbolizes purity. And it's the purity of the heart, really. It's the purity of that feeling tone within us. And if you know the story of Mary, there's a willingness there, right? Because here she is being told that she is going to give birth to the Savior, this Christ, right? And there is an openness, there's a purity of heart that says, again, here I am, Lord. Here I am, God. I am your vessel. I am here to serve the greater good. And as we say yes to Spirit with a humble heart, such magic can take place. Mary may not have fully known what the future held. Maybe she did. And maybe she realized that it was going to be challenging and it was going to bring about some heartache and difficulty, and yet she was willing. The heart was guiding her to say yes. And then we bring Joseph to sort of close out this manger scene and this nativity scene. And metaphysically, in unity, we understand that Joseph is the thinking mind. And if you know the story, you know there was a lot to think, right? He was going to get married to Mary, and all of a sudden, all this stuff was taking place, and the mind played with him. How many times has the mind played with us? That we think life should be a certain way, and it doesn't turn out that way. That we think we should be a certain way, and we're not showing up that way, and all of a sudden we get closed up. But what did Joseph do or have? He had a vision. He had a dream, and in that dream, in that vision, it was shared with him that there was a greater purpose for him. And in that moment, all of a sudden, it was no longer, I have nothing to do with this, to let me own this. How can we allow our minds to also be willing to hold the vision of who we are, to hold the vision of what is taking place within us, and to hold the vision of what we are here to be caretakers to? And the moment that positive mind then, that trust, that has courage and has hope, meets that willing heart, all of a sudden Christ is born in the world. I ask you this morning, what is the kind of experience that you want to have? What is the kind of life that we want to have? How is it that we want to show up in all of the spaces that we occupy? And how is it that we, in this very moment, want to acknowledge that there is divinity itself within us? The moment that we bring that positive thinking and that willingness of the heart together, that's where the magic happens. That's where we are able to live more fully into the truth. And that's when we realize that we ourselves are the living nativity. As you look at the nativity sets, whether it's the one that I post up, or it's the one that you have at home, or maybe it's the one that you get inspired to go purchase after this service, what does it mean to you? And if it's not the nativity, what is the tradition that you can use to support you as a tool, as a practice, to really step into your good? We are the living nativity. We are the living Christ story. We are the light that is shining upon the world in this very moment. Whatever your traditions are for you, let them be meaningful. And allow yourself to find even greater meaning in it. That, I believe, is really the spirit of the holidays, to be able to acknowledge that and to live into that more fully, so that we can live into our light and we can shine our light more fully for all to see, for all to witness, and for all to be inspired by. The Christmas holiday is about that tenderness of the heart, which is what we stand on, the love that we feel, that we allow ourselves to feel, the community that we allow ourselves to lean on. It is the courage of the present, of being able to be courageous and stand for the Christ presence that we are, to recognize that we ourselves can allow it to be reborn in us moment by moment, regardless of what is going on in the world. We can have the courage to stand in our truth, and it is the hope for the future, to know that as we stand in truth, the future becomes more bright, because the future becomes heaven on earth here and now. Charles Fillmore also said, now the time is coming when we will have Christmas year-round through giving forth that goodwill, that peace, and that spirit of love, which is the very foundation of the Christ whose birth, teaching, and character we are celebrating. Let us truly celebrate Christmas and let ourselves live into that bright light that is already within. Thank you, and namaste.